Okay, I'm going to talk about my top surgery that I had done on October 15th, 2008, and it was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, by a surgeon named Dr. Richard Tholen. I don't know if he's still in business, but he probably is. I now live in Colorado Springs, so um, I'm going to talk about what I had to do before surgery and what I did after surgery, what complications I had, and so forth. And I'm also going to talk about my full hysterectomy, what I did beforehand, what I did afterwards. Okay, for my top surgery, I had the consultation, and I'm plus sized. I'm a plus size person. I weigh little less than 241, around 240, 241. And I I weighed less back then, but anyways, um he told me that because my boobs were big, okay, they were like a size 44D or double D or something like that. Couldn't never have a bra fit right, always wore sports bras, looked like I had one big uniboob. Um, and they pulled on the upper part of my back, which hurt a lot. Um, so, and plus, whenever it was like my time of the month when I got my period, that we had an upstairs. Yeah, we lived in like a duplex, but we owned the whole thing. And my room was upstairs, and whenever I would come downstairs, my boobs would bounce, and the front parts of my breasts would hurt whenever they would bounce because they were so sensitive during my period. So that it made it hurt even more. So I looked online, and I was looking for surgeons in the Twin Cities, and I came upon his website, and I called and said, "Do you do top surgery by any chance?" And he said, "Well," they said, "Yes, he does." And I set up an appointment for a consultation, and I went. Um, I was taking Metro Mobility. I took Metro Mobility there to the appointment. My dad picked me up after, and that day I remember I was feeling so nauseous. I've been nauseous for like a few days prior to that, so all I could eat and drink was saltines and ginger ale. That was it. Um anyways, I lost my train of thought. Let's see. Saltines, ginger ale. Consultation. So I went, and I he looked, and I showed him, well, what I had, and he said, "Yeah, we can definitely um your do the top surgery, but it's going to be a little over $8,000." I'm not exactly sure the exact number, the exact price, but it was a little over $8,000. And then I was like, "Oh my God, how am I going to save $8,000? That's going to take me forever to save." And so he said that there would be some dog earring underneath my armpits, and there was, which I got fixed later with a revision. That was about a little over $500, and I got three places fixed. Anyways, I at the end of the appointment, my dad came and picked me up, and he was taking me to my day program. And he asked me how it went, and I said, "Well, it's going to cost a little bit." And he's like, "How much?" And I told him the price, that little over 8,000, whatever. But I knew the exact price then. But it's been like 11 and a half years since, or almost 11 and a half years since I've had the surgery. Um, so I asked him, I was like, um, oh, what I'm doing, I'm hands free because I have this neck mount for my cell phone. So, to keep my hands free. Anyways, um, and I said, is it possible, can you and mom afford to possibly pay for it? And he thought a minute and he said, yes. Yes, we can pay for it. And then I asked him, I'm like, Dad, will you guys pay for my top surgery? And he right away said yes. And at that moment, I was on cloud nine. I felt so the happiest I've ever felt in my whole life. It was the most happiest moment of my life. Um, you could be happy like on Christmas and stuff. The all the Christmases I had as a kid, this was the most happiest I've ever been in my whole life. And I was happy again like that later, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But um, but he said yes. So I went to my day program and I actually called the surgeon's office and I said, let's schedule surgery. And we scheduled it for like August and of 2018. But the place where I was going for my therapy hated the idea that I was getting top surgery so soon. And they wanted me to follow the guidelines, which they wanted me to go through therapy for 2 years. And I was like, that I couldn't stand having my boobs for that long any longer. So I what I did to prepare for surgery is I took a shower and I used some antibacterial soap like Dial, and we went to the doctor's the surgeon's office where I was going to have my surgery. And we me, my mom, and my dad, we were in back, and we were waiting a while. I was in a gown and I was waiting a while. And then Dr. Tholen came in and said that he had to cancel my surgery because because the Center for Sexual Health at the U of M was making such a big stink about it that he decided to cancel my surgery. And I was so defeated. I felt so angry at the U of M, not angry with my surgeon, but angry with the U of M Center for Sexual Health, and really disappointed. And I was like, screw them. I was like, screw them. Let's do the surgery. And he decided to cancel it. We didn't find out till after we got there. I'm like, you could have called. But anyways, so I had an appointment back um at the Center for Sexual Health, and oh, I vented big time. I was like, look, you don't have to live in my body. And I was talking to a therapist who didn't know she wasn't transgender, and how much this is, how much this really meant to me. And I went to her supervisor. I saw another therapist there along with her, and and I called him back and forth, and they finally agreed to send a letter. and which is what I wanted. Which before I thought they were going to send a letter, but decided not to. Anyways, I was talking to the surgeon, and with my day program, I went on this out of town trip, this actually out of state trip, and when I got back, we scheduled the surgery again for October 15th, and it was a few days before my surgery that I got a call from the Center for Sexual Health, and they said, "Oh, you're not going to be able to do your surgery again because we're not going to send a letter." And I was like, "You know what? Fine. You don't want to send a letter? Fine. I'll just go ahead and do the surgery without you guys then, without your approval." And I talked with my surgeon, and he said, no matter what, because he was calling them too, and he said, no matter what, October 15th, we're doing the surgery. No matter what. So, anyways, October 15th rolled around. I took a shower again. Of course, before surgeries, you have to take a shower. That's a given. If a surgeon tells you not to, there's something up with that, okay? Anyways, went there, and me and my mom and my dad, we were walking from the car across the parking lot to the door. And before we even hit the sidewalk, my mom asked me the question, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Mom, I am so sure. I've never been more sure in my life. This is the best decision I've ever made in my life." And she's like, "Okay." And we got there, and we got called back, and they took pictures of the before pictures. That was another clue that they didn't do that the first time. So I went, put on a gown, and that day was the heaviest day of my period. And I felt I had to go change. I had to go to the bathroom and change my pad and everything. And usually when it's for me, when it was my heaviest day, it was the most painful day, and also of course, the heaviest. So I wasn't sure if they'd be able to do my surgery at first. And a nurse asked the surgeon, and he said, "Of course we can." So I was really happy. I was like, "God, I hope my body doesn't prevent me from having my surgery today." And it didn't, which I was so happy. And so he came in, he drew on me, and then we talked to the anesthesiologist, and what he did was, before they put my IV in, he stuck a needle in and put some like numbing medication in there. So when they did the IV, it didn't hurt. Of course, when an IV goes in, it just hurts for like 2 seconds and then it's done. So then we went back. I said my goodbyes to my parents, went back to the operating room, and they had, because back there it was cold. It was really cold. So I was like, God, how am I going to, I know I'm going to be asleep, but am I going to be cold, But when I got back there was, on the bed where the surgery was going to happen, they had a blanket and this plastic air filled with heat, this heated air filled blanket that was made out of plastic that had little teddy bears on it. It was really cute. And I got under that in the blanket and I was really warm. And I was like, okay, that put my worry at ease there. And so surgeon came in and he's like, okay, are you, because I took off my gown and stuff. And he's like, you ready? And I said, I've never been so, I said, I've been ready since my boobs grew. But like, I've been ready since my boobs grew in. So, anyways, they started the anesthesia, and I was looking up at the ceiling tiles, and there was this little circle thing up on the ceiling, and I was looking at that, and my eyes started to like jump in a way. They started to move, and so it looked like that thing was dancing. And before I knew it, I was out like a light. And the next time I woke up, I was not in the operating room. I was in a different room, sitting up in a recliner. And when I woke up, I had on the, the zip up binder, and I had saw my drains and everything. And when I woke up, that's when the sensation of pain hit. And I was like, oh my God, my surgery took 5.5 hours. The average, I think, is usually about 3.5, something like that. But for me, it was 5.5. And my parents didn't wait the whole time that I was having surgery. They went and saw a movie, the Les Miserables movie. Oh, excuse me. I didn't get much sleep last night. Anyways, I the nurse came in and she's like, "Oh, you're awake." And I said, "I am in so much," because I felt the pain on my left side. And no, it was my right side. Yeah, it was my right side because that was the last side he worked on, and that was the second side he worked on. And so she gave me a pain pill, and my parents came back to the room, and I was like, um, my dad asked, "Hey, how you doing?" And I said, "I am in so much pain, but it's totally worth it. It's totally worth it." So then I went home. Oh, you're gonna want to wear a button shirt, a shirt with buttons that buttons all the way up and down, because it'll be the easiest to get on and off instead of a t-shirt. Anyways, I went home, and the first night, excuse me, the first night I slept in a recliner, and so I could be upright, and I I um damn, I lost my train of thought again. Okay, I remember. That night we emptied my drains, and they were pretty full. And as as the days go by, your drains are going to fill less and less. So, I even came out to my neighbor. My mom was talking to our neighbor outside, and I went outside, and she's like, "Oh my God, what'd you have done?" And I said, "I had top surgery." She's like, "What?" And I basically came out to her right then and there, And she's like, okay. She didn't know, and I thought she knew, because I thought my mom was telling her, but my mom wasn't. So, anyways, that was a little embarrassing, but anyways, oh God, I have something in my eye. Oh, there it is. There it goes. Anyways, um, the day of my, the day to get my drains out, I went and I got to see my chest for the first time, and it was so awesome. I was very elated and very happy and um, very relieved that I didn't have to worry about those getting in the way anymore. I saw the dog ears, and they were pretty big. Saw the front, and it was kind of big. The little piece in the front, those three spaces kind of stuck out. Um, and he took my drains out, which where they were, the little incision started to ache a little bit by the seventh day. But once he pulled them out, it it was fine. Um, and I went back. I went home. I still had the binder on that I had to keep on for a little while longer. And when when I went back to my next appointment, he took off the little pads for the nipple grafts, and um and I was looking, and I was like, and I was testing it, and there was more fluid in the left side than the right. So I showed the doctor that, the surgeon, and he's like, "Oh, we can just syringe that out with a needle." And I was like, "Okay, fine." I thought it would be like a tiny little needle, and but no, it was a needle with a hole about that big, about that big. And he's like, "Look to the other side, look away." And I was like, "Why? What's the big deal? It's just a little needle." I didn't realize it was a big needle. And when I looked, I was standing up, and he put it into my side. Of course, I was numb still, and I almost fainted. Almost. And he syringed a bunch of fluid out, and syringed more fluid out and more. And I had to come back a second time to have more syringed out. And then I was wearing these like shelf tank bras. And so I had one, and I had to put pressure where pressure. So I had to put like a piece of foam on that side in that part of my shelf bra, and my bra tank. And I had to make sure that there was enough pressure. And soon after, all the fluid, you know, most of it got sucked out, and the rest got, settled and got absorbed. Um, and I don't have that problem anymore. So that's basically my, what I did for my top surgery. Now, for my hysterectomy, um, I went to see a gynecologist, and I talked to a PA, a physician's assistant, and I said, "Look, I'm transgender, female to male, and no dude wants to have a period. I have these really awful cramps, and it's very painful where the pain goes from my front all the way to my lower back, and it's a week of misery." And she's like, "Okay, let me go talk to the surgeon." And she went and talked to him, and he said, "Sure, we'll do it." And I had to come back in 2 weeks. Came back, had had to sign the papers, and then I had to wait a month, because he has you wait a month to um to see if you change your mind or not. And there was no way I was changing my mind. And I went in on May 4th, 2011. Went in, had my surgery, and May 4th was my anniversary of when I came out as trans to the world and to my family. And what a great way to celebrate an anniversary. Um, and went in, had my surgery. Turned out I had polycystic ovaries, meaning I had cysts growing on my ovaries. I had endometriosis on the front and back of my uterus. I had an extra large uterus. And so he took it all out. He did it laparoscopically, brought it out through my lady parts. And my dad didn't think I would need it, but the surgeon came out and he told my parents, he's like, he needed that because he had polycystic ovaries, endometriosis, extra large uterus. He needed that to be done. And so my parents came back to recovery, and they saw me. And no, wait, they didn't come back to recovery. I saw them in my room because I had to spend a night in the hospital. I saw them in my room, and I was going in and out of consciousness because of the anesthesia. And my dad said, "You needed that, kid." And I was like, "Yeah, I told you." And I didn't talk to my parents much because I was going in and out of consciousness for like hours. And so they went home, and they came back later. And so did my brother, sister-in-law, and niece. They came back, and they came to the hospital and brought me a card and everything, and which was really sweet. And that my surgeon came in. Well, they all left. My surgeon came in that night, and we talked about the surgery and how I was doing. And so he went, and after about an hour or hour and a half, I started to have really excruciating pain in where the surgery happened. And and when he pulled the stuff out of my lady parts, he broke my cherry. Yeah, broke my cherry medically. And he stitched it up. So anyways, I was in excruciating pain, so I called the nurse and I said, "Can I get a pain pill, please?" And she's like, "Look, I'm the only nurse on the floor, and I have all these other patients to do, so you just have to wait." And I was like, "Okay." So I waited another 45 minutes. I called her like 3 times, and I waited 45 minutes just for her to come in and give me a damn pain pill. And she was really rude about it too. So I saw my surgeon the next morning, and I told him about what happened. And he said, "You should have called me." He's like, "You should have called me, and I would have come down, and I would have yelled at her." And she was still on at that point. He went out, and you could hear him yelling at her, saying, and apparently she was not helping any of the patients that night. She would go and be like, "Hey, how you doing?" and then leave. And where he found her, she was at the nurse's station on her phone. On her phone. Yeah. He you could hear him yelling at her. It was pretty nice to hear. And it turns out that one of his patients was bleeding internally and almost died. And she totally ignored them. So So yeah, I think she lost her job. I really hope she did. But anyways, I went home that next day and that day, and I just went home to recover. And I bled for a couple of days, which you do after you have a hysterectomy. You bleed for a couple of days. Just there's some residual stuff, and that was that. Oh, except 2 weeks later, I started bleeding, like profusely, like I was having a really bad period. So I was at the mall, and I called my mom, and I said, "Mom, I'm bleeding like crazy. I need to go to the gynecologist's office." And she's like, "Okay, I'm on my way to get you." And I called the gynecologist's office, and I said, "Look, I just had surgery 2 weeks ago, and now I am bleeding like there's no tomorrow, and for I need to see my surgeon." And they said, "Well, you can't see him, but you can see this person." And I was like, "Okay, fine." So my mom came pick me up, and we went. And the lady I saw had no bedside manner. No bedside manner. And she used the speculum that was way too big, way too long, because my area is pretty much shorter than average. So that space between is a little shorter than average. And when she shoved that speculum into me, she cut me at the ends, two little the, the two little ends right here, cut me. And when she did that, I immediately moved my foot and I kicked her in the shoulder. As she went back, and she took the specular with her. And I said, "Don't shove that. You shoved that right into me." And I started bleeding more. So then I went ahead and I was like, "I want to see someone else. I don't care who it is. I want to see someone else." And um, they didn't have anybody else at the time. So I had to deal with her. So she had a smaller speculum and she was more gentle. And because I threatened to kick her again if she wasn't gentle. And my mom was with me. And um and she's like, "Oh, I see a little blood vessel popped. You're just bleeding from there. And you're just bleeding from where the speculum hit you. It's not a big deal." She cauterized it. She cauterized the thing, and that was that. And they gave me a pad to put into my underwear. And I went back like a week later, and I saw my surgeon. And he took a look, and he's like, "You have scars from where that speculum hit you. You have scars." And he's like, "She shouldn't have been so rough with you." And he was very, very sorry and everything. And he said, "You're like the fifth patient that's happened to from her." And I was like, "Well, if I'm the fifth, shouldn't it have been like the first patient? Should have been like the last?" And I hope she lost her job. But anyways, he said everything else looked good. Everything was fine. So that was that. I healed. And that was basically all I did for my top surgery and my bottom surgery. Not bottom surgery, my hysterectomy. Um, and that's it. That's my stories. Those are my two stories. So, um, hopefully you find this information good. And um, it's just personally what happened to me. Doesn't mean it's going to happen to you, the same exact thing, or similar things are going to happen to you. It doesn't mean that. Just all I have to say is take it as it comes. That's it. And that's it. Bye.